Another leak that you might find in your GT2 is one that's coming out of kind of your grip frame area or your solenoid area, something like that. A lot of people freak out and they think, I blew my solenoid, which is rarely the case. Sometimes it has to do with something really simple, and that is you've got your reg turned up too high. And the reason why you would need your reg turned up too high is if you hadn't been lubricating this bolt system, and you keep cranking this up to try and get velocity, it is super important that this bolt is maintained and lubricated, pretty consistently with a good lubricant, because if not, then you're going to get some of that kind of bolt stick or some of these other things that you're going to suffer from. You'll probably have to turn that up too high. The solenoid will go, hey, uncle, and start to leak a little bit. That's a safety precaution so you don't blow the sucker up. But that's the first thing to make sure. Like, be honest with yourself. Have you been maintaining the gun the way that it should be maintained? Okay, so that's number one. Number two, again, is not the solenoid. Number two is the bolt seal O-ring. So if you in fact have been lubricating the gun and maintaining the gun how you should, it is most commonly this bolt seal O-ring. And the reason that is because this air in the front of the bolt is what is holding it back when the gun is at rest. And when the gun is at rest, there is no air back here. What will happen is that if there's a chunk out of this seal O-ring, some of the air will leak from the front of the bolt to this back area of the bolt. There's nothing sealing that area in the solenoid passageway, and it'll leak out through the solenoid, giving you a leak in the grip frame. So that's the first thing that you would want to check. The second thing that you'd really want to check is just to make sure that, if you've taken the grip frame apart, which really no good reason to do that unless you get like a hit or something that you really are wanting to get in there and clean. These have the possibility of slipping out or getting some debris on them. These various manifold O-rings here, or this inlet O-ring right here. This is where your main HPA air travels to the gun. So those can all be kind of culprits that can affect or create that leak. But again, a lot of times, not really. It's not a dynamic O-ring. It's not something that you should be really kind of seeing or taking apart very frequently. But something to check before you kind of freak out and think it is the solenoid. Last thing before we go, oh no, maybe it is the solenoid, is this 15 bumper. One thing that you really want to be careful of is making sure that this 15 bumper here, this 15x1 bumper, is intact and that it's in good condition. It can actually, and this is pretty rare, but it can actually degrade, and sometimes get pulled down into the solenoid in a cycle, and so you get some debris inside the solenoid. Now, worst case scenario, that does happen, or there is an issue with the solenoid. The solenoid is made in various pieces, and so a lot of times you won't have to replace the entire solenoid. You're not going to have to pay to get that done, because you can take the solenoid apart, and all the various pieces inside are replaceable and usable. And so it's not this huge, money suck if there is something wrong or if you do have to do something with the solenoid. And also cleaning that debris out too, if that 15 does get put in there, is pretty easy to do, and it won't like permanently damage the solenoid, so you're not going to have that issue there. So there's a couple possibilities as to how you could troubleshoot a leak that's coming out of the grip frame of the MacDev GT2.